Arkansas, and he's president of the Foothills Chapter of the Arkansas Master Naturalists. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Geography with a minor in Biology. He is retired from ARDOT in 2019 with 30 years of service. Thank you for serving our country. The last 18 years was spent as Geographic Information Systems, GIS, Section Head and Environmental Division. He was also in the Air Assault while in the Army in the 1980s. And again, thank you for serving our country. And so I would like to welcome him and as well as Fred Hendricks and Connie Smith. And I just can't say enough about the work they're doing. We have a lot of places where we plant Chinquapin trees, and me and everybody on the board have talked about this. And planting them is a lot of work, but taking care of them is a long-term commitment. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of state parks, the U.S. Forest Service, and other state and federal agencies, as well as us individuals and landowners that don't have the time to go out and take care of them. And the Chinquapin trees respond real well. And these folks are filling a very important need. In fact, they're doing such a good job of it. We invite them to come up here and tell us about their successes. And I've talked about Fred over here for the last 3 meetings, and so I'm glad to finally meet him. I thought you were a mythical character somewhere out there. So give a good round of applause for these folks.
Thank you, Steve. And can everybody hear me okay back there? Okay, good. Thank you all for letting us come up here and visit with you. Basically, I'm with the Foothills Chapter of the Arkansas Master Naturalists, and I've got a little slide up here. I kind of want you to know kind of like who we are and what we do as far as the Master Naturalists go. The Master Naturalists is a group of citizen volunteers that goes out and we help out during, with state parks and other entities that may need some assistance doing things. And today's talk is going to be visiting with you guys about the Chinquapin projects we've got going. And there's going to be 3 of us presenting, so you'll know how all this stuff will work out. I'll be presenting on a Chinquapin project that's actually coming up in the future. There are no trees in the ground right now, but that's going to be up at Bluffton. That's our northernmost preserve. That's with the Nature Conservancy. Fred will be talking about the Bell Slough trees over there, and he's been working with those things for quite a while, I believe over 3 years now. And those Chinquapins there are quite a success story there. He's been working with the Game and Fish on that. And then Connie has started working with the Woolly Hollow State Park folks out there, and she's done some coordinating efforts with those guys as far as watering and doing all that. We also have some native habitat that we put in over there as well. But anyways, but that's basically who we are and basically what we do. We go on out, we go and we mess around with trails, we cut down deadfall. We also put in native vegetation plots. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll go out like this last summer. We spent the entire summer collecting seeds for Bluffton, and we've got 3 plots out there that we'll be putting in. And you can see up here, there's, we've gone up to Woolly Hollow. We do a New Year's Day hike. That's what that one photo is. Over here to the right, you'll see, I believe that's Bob Verboon and Fred out there checking one of our duck boxes out there at Bell Slough. It was pretty wet that day. And then again down here we're doing a little bit of trail work. But over there is our range for the Foothills group, and it's basically those highlighted counties up there. So we're basically, our southernmost part is mostly Bell Slough, and that's down in southern Faulkner County there, down by Mayflower. Northernmost part is most likely going to be Bluffton. That's up in Van Buren County, north of Clinton. We go on over there to White County and then over to Russellville on the west side. I wanted to focus on this because one of our members, Lori Gaines, who's here, you probably saw her out there directing everybody for the picture. Anyway, but Lori actually, when the last group of Chinquapins was being planted out at Bell Slough, there were some seeds left over. And Noah Wyatt actually gave her and one of our other members some of the spare seeds. And she went on home and she planted these little guys, and this is actually their first year growth. But Chris stole a little bit of my thunder there because I was going to talk about this little guy here. And so she was pretty much ready to get those little guys in the ground, but she didn't have the tubes yet, so she went ahead and used one of those half-gallon milk jugs. But instead of just putting rocks around it, so she actually drove a piece of rebar down through that thing so the critters wouldn't get into it. Anyways, but that's that's kind of an interesting thing though, but that's just growth from this year for her little Chinquapins. I think she's got 3 of them. Anyways, but these are the cooperative efforts we're going to be talking about. The Bluffton Nature Preserve is one that I'm the coordinator for, and that's run by the Nature Conservancy. And that's, again, one of the ones that's going to be set up in the future. We're still working on that one. Bell Slough is Arkansas Game and Fish. That's what Fred's going to talk to you about, and that's a pretty extensive project there. And then Connie will be visiting with you about the Woolly Hollow project out there where we're coordinating watering those trees. Anyways, this is basically our recipes for survival for those things. Whenever you get out there and you want to do something, you want to have somebody's got to have a vision first. And that's what a lot of you guys look at and say, yeah, you know, I want to go out and do something along these lines, but, you know, how am I going to get this thing started? Well, in the past, people used to call these folks champions. You go out there and you find something that needs to be done. You figure, you know, I'm going to go ahead and step up to the plate. That's where the willing coordinator comes in. That's the next part of the recipe. Next part is once you get that done, you have to go find a willing superintendent or an ecologist. In this case, it's going to be like the state parks or possibly the game and fish, or an ecologist is what they call those contacts at the Nature Conservancy. The willing contributors are basically our team. That's the folks in the Master Naturalist group. Now sometimes these teams, you don't have to have a large group of folks to do this. You can just have a small group that you can put together. You don't have to be with the Master Naturalists and all this kind of stuff. You just have to have some willing people go out there and help out the Park Service or whoever your target audience is. The other part is the provider. This is the OCF and the blight-resistant seed. And that's a very important aspect of this, this project. And that's something that's going to be going into the future efforts over at Bluffton. The other part is cooperation, coordination. You got to make sure that you just go out there and actually communicate to each other, make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and develop different schedules for folks out there who are going to be doing the work. And then you also have to have one part contingencies, because there's always going to be something that's going to happen where you're going to have to either step up to the plate, cover for somebody who might be sick, or somewhere along those lines. Now, the last summer, Fred and Pat were actually out of state, and it was like one of the hottest summers ever. So Fred had to trust that all of us were going to coordinate with each other and make sure that those Chinquapins out there got watered. And they did, and I don't think we lost any, hopefully. But Fred will talk about all that kind of cool stuff. But anyways, the rest is basically Mother Nature. You just leave it up to her. But we want to give her kind of a kickstart, you know, these little guys. Anyways, basically this is the one I'm in charge of here. This is Bluffton Nature Preserve. And if you guys haven't ever been up there, it's a really beautiful place. And Bluffton is actually just north of Clinton. And one of the interesting things about Bluffton is it's very remote. And so it's very hard to get people that are just going to get a whole team of folks to go up there and plant Chinquapins and water them every day and all this kind of stuff. But what it is that when you go up here and you do something that's this remote, we want to use some kind of technique like what Chris was talking about earlier, where you're going to find a place in the environment where you're going to put these trees. You're basically going to let Mother Nature take her course. But you've got to look at the topography, the type of drainage that's up there, and all this kind of stuff. Now, one of the interesting things about Bluffton is that as I was looking at, here's another couple of pictures of Bluffton here. One of the interesting things about Bluffton is that they've actually got a place up there where you can rent a B&B. And that center picture up there is actually one of our NIT trainings, which is a naturalist in training that we were doing up there at Bluffton. And you can see up there, the topography up there is a lot of very steep slopes. It's very rocky. It's not some of the best soil in the world because there's not really a whole lot of soil up there. But one of the neat things about Bluffton is that it will actually, that's a type of environment that Chinquapins kind of like. And whenever I was doing research on this for this talk today, I was looking at USGS quadrangle that has some of our plots on it there in Bluffton. And I've always focused on the area where we're putting in these native habitat plots, and they were mostly in the alluvium down by the Archie Fork, which is a creek that you see running through there. Anyways, but the thing is like this one time I actually got the entire quad and I zoomed out a little bit to look at the entire quad, and literally about 1.5 miles north, by the way the crow flies, there is a landform up there that is literally called Chinquapin Ridge. And it's just north of that area, and it's spelled with a K. And the interesting thing about that is a lot of the landforms, Steve, let me grab some water real quick, my mouth's dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot better. I should have brought that up here with me. But anyways, one of the neat things about Bluffton though, and whenever you look at these types of features on USGS quadrangles, I looked up that quadrangle on some of the historical quads, and I found one that dates back to the 1950s, and that ridge line was called Chinquapin Ridge in the 1950s when they originally surveyed that. And the cool thing about that is that was actually whenever there probably were Chinquapins out here. So it's a locally identified area. And this area where Bluffton is, with all these little hills and everything, is the exact same elevation, soil type and everything as that location. So anyways, it was kind of an interesting aside that, that I laid eyeballs on there. So. But anyways, since this is a future project, we don't have anything in the ground yet. So we're still in the process of coordinating all this with the Nature Conservancy and their ecologist, a fellow named Doug Zollner, who has let us put in these various native plots out there already. And we've talked about the possibility of putting in some Chinquapins down there, but the thing is in that alluvium, they may not work as well as they would up there on the hills. So we might want to try one of Chris's ideas of taking these things up here and putting them up in tubes, in fairly remote areas up on the ridge lines, and just going in and monitoring. So that would be an interesting project to look at coming up. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce Fred Hendricks. Now, Fred is our FAMN, our Foothills, Arkansas Master Naturalist Projects Coordinator for Bell Slough Wildlife Management Area. And Fred lives in Conway. He on his lot borders Lake Conway in Game and Fish Special Use Area. And he and his wife, Pat, I think Pat's out there somewhere, and oh, there she is over there. Okay. But Fred and Pat have been married 45 years. They have 2 kids and 3 granddaughters. And she owns her veterinary practice, and Fred's her person who runs around, and I understand he's really good at wrangling llamas when she needs to give them a shot or something of that nature. So, but anyways, they've had the veterinary practice since 1984. Fred is a retired paramedic. He worked for 29 years as an EMS at Conway Regional Hospital. And they've been members of the Arkansas Master Naturalists Chapter, the Foothills Chapter, since 2019. So anyways, Fred's going to go ahead and talk all about the stuff that's going on up there at Bell Slough.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Okay, so we live on Lake Conway, which is part of, it's next to the SUA, Arkansas Game and Fish Special Use Area. And we moved out there, and when we did, just fell in love with the place and just loved the wildlife and the environment of there, and wanted to do something to help give back to the community, back to the wildlife, and looked around, and we found the Master Naturalists, and they just seemed to fit the bill. So we went and joined, went through the program, did everything, did become Master Naturalists, and in our travels, Bell Slough is just on the other side, Bell Slough, which is on the other south of us from this Game and Fish Special Use Area, and we were doing hiking up in there and found these tree markers that they had built, or they had made quite a few years ago, and were in pretty rough shape. And Pat thought, she does a lot of painting, that we could fix those up. but we thought we'd check to see, and this could also be a project for Master Naturalists, because you're always looking for projects for your Master Naturalist group. So we went into the Game and Fish office and met Josh and Noah. Just went blank on Noah, which is Chris's son, and talked to them about these stones, and they said that'd be a great idea. So we took it to the Master Naturalist board group meeting, and everybody was on board to do that. So we went out and made a work day of picking up stones using Game and Fish equipment, which was a side-by-side that Noah had, to be able to pick up the stones, bring them home, and then work on them. That's a painting project over there of refurbishing the stones, and then that was what they looked like afterwards, so we could take them back out and replace them back in place. The tree book over there is what was used for reference to refurbish the stones, and I believe Mr. Chris even has some artwork that is attributed in that book. But we loaded up the stones on Noah's side-by-side, got back out in the woods, putting them in place, and Noah comes up and says, well, by the way, my dad, he works for the Forestry Service, and he's interested in planting some trees out here. Would your organization be interested in helping take care of the trees afterwards, or be involved in the planting and taking care of it? And we said, sounds like a good idea. So we took it back, the idea, to our chapter board meeting and talked to them, and everybody's like, sure, that sounds like a great idea. So we put on board to get involved and worked with getting the site prepped. Noah and the Game and Fish crew themselves, they had already done some burns in different areas of where they were thinking of planting the trees. They had cut some of the bigger trees down, and what we went in and it helped was cut out underbrush, clean out kind of passageways of where we would plant the trees. And of course you can tell this was when COVID was just getting first going, so anytime we were grouped together, we were cooperating with masks, but most of the time we were scattered out over the hillside, just working on getting things ready for the trees, for the seeding. And there's, I bet that's Chris' hand right there. He brought the seeds and we commenced the planting. And that's Noah in the blue shirt up there, and Pat. And planting the trees, the seedlings. There was the first day, or the first planting was 2 different days. We had about 18 trees as seedlings is what we planted. We had 1 water barrel that I had brought out to set up to use for the watering of the trees. And Noah and Josh, that's Josh in the camo shirt, they're Game and Fish employees, they agreed that they would take care of coming out using a side-by-side firefighting side-by-side rig that had a tank, a pump, and be able to fill up the barrel, keep the barrels full for us. And then my job was to coordinate people to be able to do the actual watering of the trees. And there you can kind of see the steepness of the hillside, but it was a lot of fun. And then that was very close to the same kind of picture Lori had there. Our first baby picture of first baby, it was just pretty exciting a few weeks later looking down in the tube to see that. And then this one here, you can tell the date on the side of the tube and when this picture was taken, and you can see the green, how far it is up in the tube. So that's a 3-month-old. And then this was later, towards the end of the growing season, getting towards the end of the fall, but they were already, some of them peeking up. You can see some, that one in the corner, much taller than these 2 over here, and then some further on the side of the hill hadn't made it up the tube. It was just amazing how much difference in the soil, it has to be, I think, of the soil, but they all sprouted differently and grew at different rates, and they're all they're different. But that was just fun watching them. So a timeline of what we did out there, the first year we planted, you can see up there how many we planted, different plantings over a 3-year period. Last time we did an assessment of what we had in place was this past June, and of the first planting, there were 9 still growing. Second planting, 13 are still growing. This last planting, 9 are still growing. So it's a total of 31 trees still intact, and that was a total of 52 that were actually planted, because some of them died, replacement, whatever. But that's where we are. So of course now we're just, well, they're all dormant. We'll wait till spring and see just what we have. But everything I have was pretty low tech. So pencil and paper, figuring out a water schedule. You know, I had a lot of people within the organization, within our Master Naturalist group, when I put out, sent out an email, are you interested in watering trees? And had plenty of responses of people. So I was able to put together a schedule. We had it set up for twice a week. And there was no problems on getting people to work. We're just very lucky in that. And we did the twice a week, and then the next year, the new babies got twice a week, but the older trees got once a week. And then, but we'll get more into that on the second year. So I did draw maps up on the different years as they were growing to keep up with which ones died off, so that when people were watering, we would flag those if they had died, so that nobody was wasting time watering a dead tree. And I used different colored flags to designate the different years of growth, because of some getting more water than others, in order to differentiate the trees. And then Robert, he's more high tech. He's working on getting GPS coordinate map of all of the trees and getting them identified in the GPS setting, and then we can do a little bit more precise monitoring of the different trees, different ages, and see how they're progressing. So as far as low tech, that was our tech, that barrel of the cart that we pulled. And you can see from the map over there, to get back to the trees from where the parking area is, it was a mile back to there. So it's up and down some hills. It says Bell Slough, which makes you think of swamp, and it is at the bottom. But then we have quite a bit of hills, and that's what this is on, planted on this hillside, such as Chris was talking. It's facing north, because it was already decided for that. And let's see, another thing to be doing quite often is weed eating, and that's to help with the volunteers getting in, because when you did the controlled burn like that, just look at the flowers. We just overgrown, which is amazing with the wildflowers growing from doing a controlled burn. And when we did the second year growing, I added 2 more barrels, and they are at the top of the hill. And you notice I stood them up this time. Before I just had them laying down. I stood them up because it made it a lot easier for Josh and Noah, as far as for them to be filling the barrels with their side-by-side utility vehicle. So I did have to add some faucets in on the bottom of the side of the barrel, but it was well worth the trade-off. And you can see one of the flags there at the top of the tube, different colored flags for different years of planting. And then this came as a lifesaver here, golf cart. And our daughter was getting rid of an old golf cart that had been sitting in their garage, and we took and had it refurbished and turned it into a off-the-road cart. And now that's what we use to take tools and pull trailers if we're taking more stuff than what will fit on there. And it's made work a lot easier. And we have staff members club members from the association that can't walk that far physically, but they want to work, they want to help. So this works great because we can load 4 or 5 people in the cart and drive back there with tools and stuff when we're doing work days. And the Chinquapins, they started out with the tree ID stones were what got us out there, and ended up meeting with Noah and ended up meeting with for his dad with Chris. So Pat made a new Chinquapin sign just for these Chinquapins. So kind of full circle that we went from tree ID stones to get us started to now we have a real ID stone up there for them. And at the top of the hill, another organization had built this arbor quite a few years ago, and it had been just deserted. And we talked to Noah about us fixing it up a little bit, and it was, as a place for our members when they're up there working to have sit and get a little bit of shade. And so we added a roof to it, made it into a pergola, and added some vines to it, and just made it more. It's on a well-traveled trail that goes through the park, so other people can use it as well. But our members like to use that. And Lynn Pence. Lynn was a member of the Master Naturalists who really enjoyed from the onset watering the trees and just enjoyed being out there so much. And she died this last year. And we just wanted to do something for her, to her memory of the times when she was out there having such a wonderful time. So Robert is making a plaque on the arbor that we're fixing up, and it's going to be the Lynn Pence Memorial there for her memory. So we're very pleased and excited about that. And that was a picture taken at the trail. The wagon's loaded down, ready to go up on the hill to go do some more work up there. And that's just a small group of the Master Naturalists en route. And that's what we did. And Connie will be next. Hey, Connie.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, Fred's kind of a legend in the Chinquapin group up there in our neck of the woods for sure. But as I started off with this, saying that, you know, my project is something that's going to be happening in the future. Fred's project is starting to turn into kind of a legacy project. This last spring, Connie Smith over here, who will be coming up speaking next, is our coordinator for Woolly Hollow State Park. And we just planted some native gardens out there. But to introduce Connie, she holds a Master of Science in Education. She's a retired special needs children and adult educator. She's been doing that for 27 years when she retired. She's our curriculum developer for new naturalists and development of the upcoming junior fish camp. That should be very interesting, I think. Native habitat restoration and stream monitoring, which is another thing we do that I didn't mention at first, but we do stream monitoring as well, and counting invertebrates and kooky stuff like that. She's also our Foothills Chapter Secretary. She's our outreach coordinator, so if any of you guys are in our region, then give her a holler if you want to join us. And her other interests include exploring the great outdoors, hiking, and swimming, and I can definitely attest to her liking to hike places. So anyways, Connie, the floor is yours.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. Be forewarned, even though I was a school teacher, I still have to read things to folks. But the first thing I want to tell you is we have a new project at beautiful Woolly Hollow State Park, located near Greenbrier, Arkansas. In late April of this year, blight-resistant seedlings were received from the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation and planted shortly thereafter. 6 seedlings were planted at 2 different sites at the park, and the remainder were planted at staff residences. On June 15th, which is the next slide, this is a fun one where we had training. The Foothills Chapter was invited to attend training for care and watering of the Chinquapin seedlings. Park staff and Foothills volunteers are willing learners and very dedicated. Whether in the near drought and heat conditions or misting rain, they came out to check on and care for the Chinquapins. The park interpreter at that time was Caleb Myers. He taught us to use garlic salt, cayenne powder, organic insecticide spray, and ant powder for bug and critter control. Several gallons of water must be hauled in each time by the team to water must be hauled in each time along with our supplies. I hope that made sense. To assist us with the care program, our next slide, ATV training was offered online through the park. The training enabled us to use their ATV to pack in supplies and water to the seedlings, which are down forest trails about a quarter-mile long. Leaf destruction continued even while spraying organic insecticide down the tubes. I reached out to Steve Bost of the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation, and he recommended pulling the tube up above the plant, spraying each individual leaf with organic insecticide to kill larvae and bugs, wait 10 minutes, then wipe thoroughly with a wet paper towel, allow it to air dry, then securely pull the tube back down in place. Good growth began to be noticed. With near drought conditions, we were all concerned about how much water to increase to keep that all-important taproot developing straight down into the soil. An email with the pictures of the site was sent to Steve Churchill of Hobbs State Park, and he quickly recommended that we should move the rocks back from the tubes as soil compaction may be occurring and water saturation was not being allowed. The process worked. Comparing the 2 sites, which are about a mile apart, tubes 5, 6, and 7 fared better than 8, 9, and 10. Leaf destruction, ant colonies, and less growth were noted at 8, 9, and 10. Throughout the period of June through November, better growth was seen at 5, 6, and 7 consistently. Superintendent Robert Giles and Assistant Superintendent Eddie Chavecki would like Foothills to continue volunteering at Woolly Hollow State Park, as 10 new seedlings will be planted there in the near future. In summary, the care program of Woolly Hollow State Park officials and Foothills volunteers are successfully keeping seedlings alive that continue to survive. Monitoring of the Chinquapins should continue throughout the year at the park. Thank you, and that's it.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Okay, well, there you go. That's the 3 Chinquapin projects we have going on right now, not counting the ones that are being put in the ground by our members. One of the things, that I'd like to say is that if you guys do want to ever get out here and work with the Park Services and Nature Conservancy and all these guys are always looking to have assistance out there, because these guys have got very limited staffs. And a lot of times, as Steve had mentioned several times, that these guys will be out there and they, especially Woolly Hollow, which is a very popular park, these guys have got to try to water the Chinquapins, go out there and deal with all the stuff going on in the park, plus a lot of other, necessities, just keeping the place up. So the more folks that volunteer, the better off you'll be, especially if you're retired, because it beats sitting around the house, watching TV and doing that kind of stuff, and just watching the cats lay all over you, which happens to me most of the time. But the thing is, though, is that I'm going to have to leave this afternoon, but Connie and Fred will be here this evening and throughout the rest of I think they're going to go on the hike tomorrow. So if nothing else, what we've covered here is just scratching the surface of the stuff these guys are actually doing in these parks. And so if you have an opportunity and you seek these guys out, so now you know who they are and everything, so you don't have any excuses for not talking to them or anything like that. You can pick these guys out and actually ask them about some of the dynamics that are going on with their projects And their projects are very dynamic, they're very useful, they're very successful. And one last thing I want to note too is the soil that is up there at off the Kenny Vernon Trail at the Chinquapins at Bell Slough is actually a type of soil that's called mountainberg. And the mountainberg soil is supposedly one of the worst soils in the world, and you cannot grow anything on it other than a Chinquapin tree. And you know, but of course you can't grow other things. But you know, I'm trying to say that for emphasis though, when things go on at Bluffton, and we're working with Bluffton, Bluffton has the same type of soil. And it's a very unique thing. If you guys haven't had an opportunity to go to any of these parks or sites that we've talked about, please do so. It is very, very, very interesting, very fulfilling. So, thanks to you, Steve, and the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation, and thanks for Leslie for all of your great work on making the blight-resistant seed and all that. That was very informative. Thanks.
Thank you.